I have 6 days to completely transform this car and make it run again before it goes back to Pete Harrell's to dyno. That's not a lot of time because in that time, I need to convert the Hemi to coil on plug ignition, dry sump oiling, change the collectors on the headers, re-gear the rear end, new O2 sensors. I forgot what else. It's a lot. But we're going to get most of it done, maybe even all of it. I don't know. We'll see here on this episode of Finnegan's Garage. Thanks for hanging out. Let's go. Welcome back to Finnegan's Garage. Thanks for hanging out, especially those of you that went to fsmgarage.com after I blew up the Hemi again and bought a shirt, because every dollar you spent, which is probably not the best decision you could have made, went right to the crankcase of this thing because it needed pistons, it needed rings, it needed head gaskets, and we're trying to make it better. Faster, more powerful, more reliable. A lot going on in this episode. We're going to take some parts from Moroso and attempt to convert this to dry sump oiling, which is not going to be easy because that means I've got to reconfigure the steering, the front motor plate, the radiator mounts. Like, it's a lot. We're going to convert from a single coil and MSD distributor to MSD smart coils. So we're gonna have coil on plug ignition. So we're gonna have more timing control for each individual cylinder. We are gonna re-gear the rear end with some new parts from Quick Performance because we're gonna go from a 430 to a 389 rear gear set. What else? I don't know. It's a lot. We're gonna put a new shifter in it. We should just get to work. There's a lot to do. First things first, let's open up the MSD stuff and figure out where the heck are we gonna mount 8 ignition coils. The good news is Joe and I already dropped the Hemi back in the car, which allowed us to find out things that just flat out were gonna work, like the oil pan. It is really close to our steering drag link, which means I gotta build a new one that is S-shaped and drops under it. So we gotta do that. Joe already pulled out the original third member and replaced it with one from Quick Performance. Time to re-gear Blasphemi. And here's what we've got going on. This is our old center section. We got this from Quick Performance, the same guys that built the 9-inch in Blasphemi, the 9-inch in the Death Metal Charger, that monster Ford rear end that's in the Roadkill ramp truck. Pretty much I go to those guys for all my rear end needs because they kill it. And so the reason we're making this change is this center section currently has a 430 ring and pinion in it. I want to change that to a 389. And I don't want to rip this apart because I'm gonna need it for something else, so we're leaving that together. So we got another ring and pinion, and there are some subtle differences about these two units. This center section is got a Mosier housing. This is an HD center section with what's called a Pro gear. This is a ring and pinion gear set that's made of a softer material that is, in general, better for hard-hitting stuff that leaves the starting line. And I'm not saying Blasphemi makes a ton of power. What I'm saying is when you dump the clutch, because it's a diaphragm clutch, it's not a slipper style, it destroys this thing. And so the shock loads are pretty high in this car. And so this is called a Pro gear. It's softer. It should, stand up to that, should be happier in that situation. This also has a larger input shaft. This one has a 35 spline pinion. This has a 28 spline. So one of the things we're gonna have to do here is we're gonna have to change our drive shaft speed sensor. This is from Motion Raceworks. This is a 16 pin one that would fit on this, no problem, but this one is a larger diameter one. And so we got to mail order that real quick, but in the meantime, we can at least get this in the car. Our drive shaft should bolt right back up in there. This is also a 9.5-inch ring gear as opposed to our 9-inch ring gear. So everything about this is beefier. Joe was attempting to install our new gear set, and when he did, one of the studs, this one here, backed out. Now these are similar to a wheel stud, they're knurled. And as you can see, the knurl is completely shot. So this thing, even if you could get it to stay put while you slid the case on, when you put the nut on it and try to tighten it, it's going to spin in the housing. And my only way to fix this right now is to just throw a MIG weld right there on the backside. So that's what I'm going to do. We've cleaned this, or rather Joe's cleaned it, so hopefully it doesn't explode. Hopefully the fumes are gone. Hopefully there's no grease on the backside here, what I'm welding to. There's a lot of hopefullys here. So wish me luck. Okay, here we go.
Come on. Well, no, I got it on there okay. For some reason, on this passenger side, I can't get it to go flat against the housing.
Is it because you've got the driver's side on too far?
No, I can pull the driver's side back out and make it flat.
We learned some things during that change because we were going to switch from a Strange to a Mosier because that's what we get our hands on. And then it turns out the retaining caps for the Mosier center section hit the back of our Ford 9-inch on the inside. So it couldn't go in, not without some extensive machining. So we went back to a Strange with a different set of gears in it. That fit in perfectly. What else? Joe already installed a new shifter. For you guys that don't know, this Hemi is backed by a Tremec T56 gearbox that's been totally redone by G-Force, and it had a stock Tremec shifter in it, which on the street, nothing wrong with it, works great. There's a little more slop in it that I'd like though, and given that most of the fastest stick shift racers in the world with an H pattern run a tick shifter, I thought I'll buy one and I'll try it. So Joe put that in. We have the big headers on it from the last dyno session. We're going to keep running those, but they had a 4.5-inch collector, which it works. They picked up power over the small 3.5s, but packaging that in the car with side pipes is going to be difficult. On my particular engine, you can go too big with primary tubes and collectors. The only way to find that out is to keep testing, which would be difficult and really expensive were it not for companies like Stainless Headers Inc. because they have off-the-shelf cannons like this ready to go. Like whether you need collectors, whether you need primary tubes, tabs, anything you need to build your own headers, or you can buy headers from them. Like if you got a turbo in LS or a big block Chevy or a small block Chevy or a Ford, they have log manifolds and headers ready to go for you. So we just put on a set of 4-inch collectors on these headers. So let's start here. MSD smart coils. We're going to use 8 of these, 1 per cylinder, and we have to find a cool place to mount these because, well, there's a lot of them. You don't want them just willy-nilly hanging out anywhere. Holley does offer smart coil mounts. This is from its Sniper line of EFI parts. And so we're going to start with these. If these will work for us, awesome. If they won't, they'll make a great template for making our own mounts. First things first, let's mount 4 of these on here, and then we'll see where on the car we might fit them. A lot of people mount coils, you know, under, next to the engine block, frame rail, firewall. You got options. We don't have as many options as most people for a lot of reasons. First off, I mean, ostensibly, this is supposed to be a late 60s looking gasser. Nobody would have had smart coils. So if I could hide them, that'd be great. If I can't hide them, let's at least make them look cool, while also not vibrating too much and not getting exposed to too much heat. And you know the deal. Make them last. If you can use these mounts, they're great. They make mounting your coils pretty easy.
It would be great if we could put them on the block underneath, but the dry sump on the driver's side really kind of puts a damper on that.
Yeah, the bummer about that deal is, you know, a couple videos ago, I had a used dry sump oil tank from Game Over, And I was like, sweet, we'll get a head start on the project and we'll mount that. And I mounted it on the passenger side of the radiator, because on the driver's side of the radiator is where my battery is. Well, the dry sump oil pump can go on either side of the motor, but our oil pan is set up for outlet fittings on the driver's side. So really that pump ought to go on the driver's side of the motor for ease of plumbing, which means, you know, I don't have it here in front of you. It's over here. You guys can see it over here. Really, that tank should be over there, which we might have to move it, which will suck. But
That's a bummer.
what are you going to do? That's what happens when you try to jumpstart a project when you don't have all the pieces. All right, so this is a Hemi, so the spark plugs and wires go into the valve covers. And those spark plug wires used to be routed forward and right to the distributor, which goes in the standard place that a Hemi distributor goes. This distributor is unique because it actually has a second pickup in here that gives you a cam sync for your EFI, so you can run sequential fuel injection. We're going to replace this with another one that will no longer have a spark plug cap on it. It's just going to be a cam sync plug. So all it's doing is telling the ECU where the camshaft is, and also it's going to connect the oil pump drive. So it'll be a lower profile, it'll clear all of this stuff better, and it won't look weird that we just have a distributor in there with a cap and no wires on it, because all the wires are going to go to these. But now we got to figure out where these are going to go. And you know, this has potential. Probably not with this mount because it doesn't quite fit, but that would be pretty sweet. But then you got to consider symmetry. When you go to the other side of the car, we've got a lot of stuff in the way, so this can't exactly go here as long as the clutch master cylinder is there. And, you know, if you decide to let the snowball keep getting bigger, we could move this. This could go. You know, American Powertrain makes a new clutch pedal for Tri-5 Chevys where the master cylinder is on the clutch pedal in the car. Gets rid of all that, then this could conceivably go there. You know, they could go here. However, your header is right here. So even if you got it above the header, you have all the heat from the header. You know, they could go on the frame rail. And then you could route the wires up between the header tubes, kind of like a normal set of headers. Not bad, and it kind of hides them a little bit under the headers. They will get hot. There will be quite a bit of vibration there, though.
They will get wet if you're doing drag week and you caught in the rain.
They will get wet. We could make our own mount, separate these, and just do 2 and 2. You'll have the heat. We can make a heat shield, but you'll have the heat there. I don't like this because then when the hood's open, this becomes the centerpiece. The Hemi's the centerpiece, but this just becomes kind of like right in your face. We could do this. Make our own mount and put them right there. Ooh, we could do coils under that ledge right there. This ledge isn't normally there. When we started building this car, I cut this part of the firewall and moved it back 3 inches and welded it back in. And then at some point, when Cotton painted the car the first time, Cotton moved it back even further for me because I didn't move it enough the first time. But yeah, maybe that's something. I kind of like that. Let me take this off here. And let me put a connector on it. I don't have the connectors.
All the connectors are right here.
Oh, there they are. I was like, I don't have the connectors. Okay. That's not bad. I've got, if you put it just to the end there, there's plenty of room for the wire behind it. Kind of like that. I do like this too, though. I probably like this more than this, but we'd have to switch from that firewall mounted master cylinder. Finally, after staring at this over and over and considering mounting them to the valve cover and whoops, doing all kinds of things, Joe realized that we got to build new motor plates anyway for our dry sump oil pump. Why not extend them upward and put the coils here? That would not work with that distributor. However, we're going to take that distributor out and put this MSD plug in it.
It's so cute.
It's very cute because it's tiny. It will drive the oil pump and give us a cam sync for our EFI. And I believe that if this is in here instead of this distributor, we might be able to mount these in such a way where they're not in the way of our alternator. In fact, I'm certain we can. So we might end up with these here and another set here. And, you know, obviously at first glance, it doesn't really look like it belongs on a gasser, but when the hood's shut, you won't see it. That's how I'm rationalizing it to myself. You know, same with the EFI port injection. You know, when the hood's shut, you can't see it, so who cares? So I think that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to make new motor plates. This side will have a revision for our dry sump oil pump and be extended up to mount these. This side will be cut out for our alternator and extend up for these. I like that solution. And then you can neatly run the plug wires. That'll work.
Yeah, to stay away from the heat.
Yeah. It's in front of the headers where the air is coming as opposed to above them or below them. Like this is good. I like this.
Less chance of burning one up.
Yeah. Yep. All right. I like that plan. Let's go with that. Now, these original motor plates, oh my God, it's probably been 10 years, 11 years since I made these. These are made out of 6061 aluminum, and they're 1/4 inch thick, and they worked well. They were great. They've been cut multiple times for, originally this one had a cutout for a Chrysler alternator. Then we switched to an LS alternator in the staging lanes at Drag Week, actually. And so we have an idea of what we want. What we need, though, is enough material to mount that right there. So what we're going to do here is we're going to lay this on top of the only aluminum I currently have here, which is not a 1/4 inch thick. It's actually 3/8 thick. And probably overkill for what we're doing, but it will be sturdy. And it's what I have, so that makes it perfect. So I'm going to lay this out in the ballpark of where I think it needs to be. And what I'm trying to do right now is figure out, can I get both mounts out of this? And I think I can.
The other side's longer.
In fact, I'm positive I can get both mounts out of this. And what I know is, because we measured the car, this is the center line of these bolt holes, and I want to space this mount up 7/8 of an inch. And we're only going to add enough material to pick up these 4 bolt holes. The mount doesn't need to come way up here. That's just adding unnecessary weight. So what I'm going to do is use some machinist layout fluid called Dykem. I'm just going to put this on here. And if you don't have this, a fine point Sharpie works real well. Hell, a fat point Sharpie, if you're going to cut on the outside of the line, works well too. But this comes in brush-on form, spray-on form. As always, I'm neither a machinist nor a professional. I've just learned a few things here and there over the years that work okay. But if you have a way better idea of how to do this job, I'd love to hear about it. Write in the comments. I think that would be awesome. I love your tips. Make no mistake, it's faster just to trace it and lay it out with a marker. The problem with the marker is it can come off, whereas this is going to stain the material really well. And if you spray it with certain things, or if you get it pretty hot, you won't necessarily lose your marks. That's really the benefit of using this stuff. When you scribe a line in this, it's in there pretty darn good. Okay. Now we'll let that dry, and then we'll trace out our template, and then we'll go cut it in the bandsaw, drill some holes in it, and then we will have a coil mount.
Plug on that top coil came out just perfect.
Yeah, that just barely cleared.
Yeah. But it works.
This looks cool. Looks like a mountain of horsepower. My wife is gonna dig this.
Said nobody.
She's gonna be so excited. Wait till I show her this. Holidays are coming. I'll be like, baby, look what I got us.
It's an MSD Christmas tree.
I got a mountain of MSD coils here, baby, just for you and for me. That one doesn't quite want to go in.
I have to open that hole a little bit or something.
Yeah, our hole might be just a hair off on that one. Oh, no, all of a sudden now it wants to go. I talked some smack and then it was like, no, I'll do it. I'll do it. Nice. We can't put our intake manifold on because we don't have the gaskets, but we can make the plug wires for this.
Yeah.
A mess. What a can of worms.
Yeah, but it's a better car now. Now it's easier to get the motor in and out. And we're gonna have a way more powerful ignition system than we had before. Which I actually
handle.
I got the T-handle. Which I actually think it's gonna make more power just with that by itself.
Got it for a second? Mm-hmm. I will move. Okay.
Got nuts.
I got it. What, nuts on it?
Yeah. Let's bolt her on up. Alright, now we need a straight edge so we can figure out how much we need to space this out. Straight edge and a short ruler.
No what?
Straight edge and a short ruler. Looks like it needs to come out like 3/4 of an inch.
And that pulley's right on the front of it right now?
It's one washer.
No, this one I mean.
It's one washer, yeah. So if you put the straight edge against here, it will. Okay. So that's where it lands. Now tell me how far forward you have to come.
3/4 of an inch. Because we're 1 inch. Whoops.
Make me blind. I'm under Blasphemi for a couple of reasons. First off, I want to show you what a dry sump oiling system is. Dry sump refers to an oil pan where the sump area, which is usually in the rear in a V8 car, where that sump area is very short. And the reason it's called a dry sump is because the external oil pump is designed with several scavenge stages. See these fittings, 1, 2, 3, 4? Every one of those fittings has a hose that goes to my oil pump, and that oil pump is designed to suck the oil out of the sump from several areas of the sump. So in theory, this sump has a minimum amount of oil in it at all times, and there's a couple of benefits to that. The first benefit is, obviously, there's some reduced weight there. You know, you don't have 5 quarts of oil sitting there in the pan, but that's not really what's important. What's important about having less oil in the pan is you now have less oil for the crankshaft to whip around within the crankcase. You have less of a chance of a counterweight of the crankshaft going through that oil. And what does that do? Well, first off, that will reduce the parasitic drag that comes with a big counterweight whipping through motor oil at 8,000 RPM. The other thing that it does is, imagine going through all the trouble to have your machine shop balance your crankshaft, and it's perfect. It's perfectly balanced. And then that crankshaft goes through motor oil, and one counterweight's got a little bit of oil hanging on it. One's got more than that. One's got less than that. Do you really think your crank is still balanced when that's happening? Nah, probably not. And you have a bunch of drag on your crankshaft as it's spinning. But more importantly, when the crank spins through the oil, it turns it into foam, and that will wreak havoc on your oil pressure. So going from a wet sump, which is a deeper oil pan that usually has one pickup at the very back of it and an internal oil pump, and switching to a dry sump gets the oil off the crankshaft, away from it, reduces the foam. Now, how do you do that? Where's the oil pump? Well, here's my oil pump. It's now outside of the engine block next to it. This is a 6-stage pump from Moroso. And this is just a mock-up belt. It doesn't have the right tooth profile. It's not wide enough. I just used it to establish, a belt length so I can order the right belt. But this external oil pump is driven off the crankshaft instead of being driven off of the camshaft or the distributor gear. This oil pump has lots of fittings along the bottom of it. It has giant -16 fittings that will each one get a hose and then connect to the oil pump, to the oil pan. And this is what's going to suck the oil out of the pan. Then it has a smaller one, a -12 right here. This is going to get a hose that splits to the valve covers, and it's going to suck the oil out of the valve covers up there because it takes a long time for that oil to drain back all the way down. So we're going to aid that. The other thing that this is going to do is, if the crankcase is sealed up tight, if we did a good job in all of our sealing surfaces, and if the valve covers are sealed up nice and tight, this pump, in theory, can create a vacuum inside of the crankcase. And what does that do? If you can create a vacuum instead of positive crankcase pressure, that will help the rings seal to the cylinder walls. And if you can improve ring sealing, you can actually make some extra horsepower versus a wet sump oiling system. The other thing that will do is improve the combustion process. If you can make the rings seal to the cylinder walls better and reduce the amount of oil that gets by, i.e. blow by, into the combustion chambers, you reduce the chance of detonation. So there's a lot of reasons to make the switch from a wet sump to a dry sump. It might add horsepower. You're going to reduce the chance of detonation. You're going to have better oil control. A big problem with this car was at 160, when I pulled the lever and the parachute came out, the drag created from that parachute and the rapid deceleration would send all the oil forward out of my wet sump pan, and I'd have no oil pressure as I slowed down at the end of a drag strip pass. So a lot of reasons to do this. The downside of this is cost. You know, a dry sump system is way more expensive than a wet sump. It's a $3,000 oil pump, let's be real. But it's beautifully machined, and it's probably going to save the Hemi from an early death. So in my opinion, worth it, obviously, because rebuilding a Hemi sucks and it's expensive.
Dry sump oil pump is pretty much plumbed at this point. We still have to hang the oil tank and some other lines, but we're getting close. So we're turning our attention to one of the other problems we have, is that our new dry sump oil pan is way too close, not only to the axle, but also the drag link for our steering. The axle is about 1 7/8 inches from hitting the oil pan, and we have 2 inches of shock shaft showing. Now, we can put a bump stop on the shock shaft to keep this from hitting here. However, the steering drag link has about that much between it and the oil pan, which means when the suspension compresses, this is hitting the oil pan, and that's no good. So to fix that, we're gonna take this off. And if you look, if I was to simply flip it around and put it on the back side of the pitman arm, that gains me some room there. That gains me about, well, almost 1.5 inches worth of clearance. And if I was to space this out a little bit more, I'd gain even more. And if I drop this end down, I'd gain even more. So what we're gonna do, because I don't wanna reuse the tie rods when I do that, we're gonna craft a completely new drag link here. And I got some chromoly tubing, weld sleeves, and some rod ends from RK Racecraft here in Georgia. My friend Ryan dialed me in with these. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna drill out the taper on the pitman arm and on our steering arm here. And we're just gonna run a high strength bolt through it and then just use rod ends which can pivot, and we're going to move to the back of that arm there and to the bottom of this arm here, and we're going to gain more clearance so that then we have plenty of room for the suspension to compress. So this tube will get shortened, these pieces will get welded in place. We still have the adjustabilities because this is all threaded, but this will move our steering away from our oil pan, which is awesome. So first things first, drill out the tapered part of the arm, because this is tapered for a ball joint. We're not running a ball joint anymore. We're just gonna run a bolt, a really big 5/8 bolt. Okay, let's drill. Ow. Says yes, we now have 2 inches of clearance, and after we add one more leaf spring to each side, I bet we're gonna have 2 1/4 inches of clearance, which is basically what we need. Much better. So these rod ends are left-hand thread, right-hand thread, so you can adjust this just by spinning the bar.
There you go.
Steering's fixed.
Right about now, you're noticing she looks different, and you'd be right. That is the battery that used to be on the driver's side. It's now on the passenger side. And that is because In an effort to shorten the pressure and the return line from our dry sump tank, we ended up moving it over to the driver's side and actually swapping tanks. This is a different Moroso oil tank. This is a 5-quart unit, and it's pretty cool. I wanted to show you guys one of the features I did like was they offer a remote mount oil filter that clamps to the tank. And we moved everything over here to shorten up all the lines going down to our dry sump oil pump. And this thing's almost ready to fire. We primed it today. I got to plumb the puke tank, the upper radiator hose, wire up the battery and the coils. And then this thing should roar to life. And the next time you will see it, it'll be back on Pete Harrell's dyno, hopefully making more power than it ever has. And we'll show you that on a future episode of Finnegan's Garage. Thanks for hanging out.